stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, An Elegant Guide to the Craft of Storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm film scholar, hanging on by a thread. Any ninny can see that. Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm story expert and Mrs. Big Pile of Dust, Lani and Rich, and we are here today to talk about Something Blue, the 9th episode of Season 4.
Something Blue aired on November 30th, 1999, and was written by Tracy Forbes and directed by Nick Mark.
All right, as you all probably know by now, this is a fully spoiled Buffy podcast, so if you have not seen all of Buffy, go watch it right now and then come on back because it'll be worth it. I'll be back in the morning with donuts and motherwort. All right, let's go on patrol. In Something Blue, Willow is grieving Oz, and Riley invites Buffy to a picnic with ants because Iowa Boy is smooth. Later, while on patrol, Buffy talks to Willow about Riley. Maybe he's too normal, too nice, no pain to provide the spark. In the very next scene, Buffy interrogates Spike about the commandos while Spike is being held captive in Giles' bathtub. And we get this, which is more chemistry than Riley and Buffy have ever or will ever have.
Look at my poor neck. All bare and tender and exposed. All that blood just pumping away.
Oh, please. Giles, make us stop.
Out in the living room, Willow comes up with the idea of putting a truth spell on Spike, and Giles sends her to work. Giles and Buffy think that Willow is dealing with Oz leaving, but Spike says she's hanging on by a thread. Willow goes to Oz's apartment and finds all his stuff gone. He sent for his things.
I feel like I've been split down the center and half of me is lost. I know. It feels like that now. Oz is gone.
The next day, Willow doesn't show up for the truth spell, and she crashes Buffy and Riley's picnic, making it infinitely more interesting with her grief, because even Willow's pain, which hurts everyone with a heart, is more interesting than Riley talking about whatever he was driving a car, I think. Anyway, that night at the Bronze, Willow seems happy and over it, but we discover it's just a front brought to you by beer, which we just learned is bad. And doesn't anyone pay attention to after-school special messaging anymore? Jeez. That night, Willow wakes up and goes to her box of magic. She has an idea, a spell for her will to be done. It doesn't seem to work, though. Giles comes in the next day wondering what happened with the truth spell, and she explains that she forgot and tried to do a spell to have her will be done, and he talks to her about the danger of doing spells without supervision while she's grieving, and she is in no mood to hear it.
You all want me to take the time and go through the pain, as long as you don't have to hear about it anymore.
No, that's not fair.
Isn't it? Because I'm doing the best I can, and it doesn't seem to be enough for you guys.
And I see how you could feel that way. I do...
No, you don't. You say that you do, but you don't see anything.
This is why you have to be careful with your language when doing spells, people. Giles goes back home with Willow's book and supplies and tries to do the truth spell himself, but he can't exactly see. He accidentally drops the key to Spike's restraints, and Spike gets away, grabbing his leather jacket on the way out the door. Because
That's
of
right,
course
priorities.
He does. Priorities. Giles calls Buffy while she's talking to Willow, and Buffy has to go get Spike. Willow says she'll find him in 2 seconds, and when Buffy goes outside, there he is. She brings him back to Giles's. Willow goes to see Xander, who defends Buffy going to get Spike because she needs him, and then Willow sarcastically suggests Buffy marry Spike. And then this happens.
It's just so sudden. I don't know what to say.
Just say yes. And make me the happiest man on earth.
Oh, Spike. Of course it's yes. Giles, you'll never believe what's happened.
At Xander's, Willow says that he is a demon magnet and then leaves. Giles calls and leaves a message for Willow while Spike and Buffy plan their wedding, with Buffy asking Giles to walk her down the aisle as he is more her father than Hank Summers ever was. Giles is touched at first and then realizes how ridiculous the whole thing is. Spike and Buffy have a jealous spat over Angel and Drusilla, but then Giles goes completely blind and Spike and Buffy work together to reverse the spell.
See, this is how it's gonna be. Spike will even take care of you while I'm at the magic shop. From now on, we're family.
It's all right. I have more scotch.
Buffy goes out to the magic shop to get supplies and stares into a window display with a wedding dress. Riley walks up to her and is surprised when she tells him she's marrying some guy named Spike. But Jesus, Riley, you took her on a picnic and told her you'd teach her how to drive? Arms alone only get you so far, buddy. In the basement, Xander and Anya are attacked by demons, and they rush to Giles's and see that Giles is blind, and Spike and Buffy are getting married, and... Wait, Xander's remembering something.
She told me I was a demon magnet, and you two should get married.
But I didn't see anything.
She did a spell.
Yes. To have her will done. Whatever she says is coming true.
And you both were affected. I probably only escaped because I'm the Slayer. Some kind of natural immunity.
At the dorm, Willow shuffles sadly into her room when a demon comes up behind her and kidnaps her. The gang shows up at the dorm to find her gone and a portal burned into the rug. Anya says it's D'Hoffryn, the guy who made her a demon 1,120 years ago. They go to the cemetery where Anya can do a spell to summon D'Hoffryn back and stop him. But Xander's current status as a demon magnet has demons coming down on them while Anya tries to create the circle and begins to recite. Down in the demon dimension, D'Hoffryn shows Willow the chaos she has caused, but she wants to get back to her friends and help them.
That is your answer?
It is.
I'm sorry to hear that. Oh well. Here is my talisman. You change your mind, give us a chant.
In the crypt, the demons are getting the best of Anya and Xander, and Buffy and Spike start making out. Willow shows up and ends the spell. The demons disappear. Spike and Buffy come back to their senses mid-kiss. The next day, all is back to normal, and Willow tries to bake her guilt away with minimal success. Buffy says this experience with Spike has her completely over the bad boy thing, so that leaves, Riley. Buffy bumps into Riley on campus, and we end an otherwise excellent episode with this bit of other nonsense.
You really have a lot to learn about women, Riley.
You're gonna teach me.
All right, I'm sorry. I made you say all the anti-Riley stuff.
No, it's fine. Totally
He's
fine.
just so terrible, though. Fucking Riley. All right.
He's just boring.
He's just so fucking boring. Even with the superhero initiative, he almost becomes more boring with that stuff, which I don't know how he manages to become more boring when we find out that he's kind of a little bit of a superhero.
He's a superhero, and somehow that's worse?
Ugh.
Right.
The only thing he had going for him is that he was normal, and then when he's not normal, fuck Riley.
But
I mean, she does, but
yeah. But also, no, I think that's a thing. I think this is a thing. No, really. I think this is a thing to chat about. If he was just a normal guy who was totally normal. He was just a normal guy from Iowa with his, his family farm and his dogs. All right. But
he could have been a support person. He could, if he could possibly handle the fact that he's the man, so he has to be more powerful. But anyway, that's a whole Riley discussion. We'll get into that. But Noelle, now that I've dragged you off topic, let's go ahead and start the fucking episode. So,
what topic were we on? What's happening?
Well, I don't even know. I get so distracted by Riley because he's just so annoying and boring. But
welcome
but
to
anyway.
Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast where we hate on Riley.
Well, I hate on Riley. See, the thing is, it's really nice because you like Riley. So, like, the fact that you like him makes me feel like I don't have to represent the people who like him, and you can do that.
I enjoy him. I don't know that I like.
Don't take it so far as I like.
I don't know that. No. Like he is very attractive, and I enjoy like his face and his voice and the general shape of him. But I'm not sure I would say I like. Anyway, whatever. It's fine.
Anyway, that's a whole.
We're
Riley
splitting
thing.
semantic hairs.
We're
Shall we?
splitting semantic hairs on Riley's head.
Speaking of hair,
who cares? Yes, let me go ahead. Okay, well, first, so let me start this episode off. I've already screwed it all up, but that's okay. Let me start it off with the question I always ask you. So, Noelle, here we are at Something Blue. How do you like the episode?
This episode is completely delightful.
Isn't it though?
There are maybe like 3 things that I don't like, and even then I'm like, that's fine. But
yeah,
this episode is completely delightful. The end. We'll be back next time with.
See you later.
Bye.
Go to patreon.com/chiprish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it is. It's just an absolute delight. But one of the things that I did want to talk about, I'm going to start off with my Buffy curly hair theory. Now, I came up with this some years ago where I was like, you know what I'm noticing in season 4? And it is very specific to season 4. Although I think we've had a couple of episodes like in season 3 where Buffy's hair was curly and it's always in this kind of alternate reality space, you know? Mm-hmm. But apparently it's not just my theory, and it is also disproven with a number of examples from completely normal episodes. But there are a lot more episodes in which Buffy's hair is like not wavy. We get wavy in season 5 and season 7, and that's fine, you know, but like generally like curly, right? And it's always some kind of like alternate reality. We just had the crimped hair in Beer Bad, right? Which was kind of an alternate Buffy. You know, reality.
Emmy award-winning Buffy hair.
Exactly. Now we have Something Blue, right? Her hair is all kinky and curly and everything is off. And Who Are You, in which Faith takes over her body, her hair curls, right?
Yes.
Yes, but in this year's Girl, right before the Freaky Friday switch, straight hair. Right? So we've got that Superstar where Jonathan has altered the universe. Her hair is curly. Where the Wild Things Are, in which Buffy and Riley are under that stupid fucking sex spell. And oh my God, I'm not looking forward to that episode. What was I saying? Oh, anyway, the whole thing is it's not actually a hugely defensible theory because it's not consistent all the time. And sometimes we have curly hair Buffy in regular world. But I will say more often than not, when we get curly hair Buffy, it's in the middle of an altered universe kind of scenario.
I love that. I
Weird
love
shit's
that
going
so
down.
much. Yeah, and now
so I know, let's keep an eye out for the Buffy curly hair for the one episode where I'm like, nope, this is a completely normal episode and she's got the curly hair. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll all be on Buffy hair watch if we're not already, because I mean, there's some good hair on this show.
Oh yeah.
Just
full
stop.
Yeah.
But yes, so I was so excited to talk about Something Blue because as I was rewatching it, and by the way, this is one of the few episodes that I have watched probably more times than I can count.
Oh my God, I love
because it's just
this episode.
so goddamn delightful.
It's so fun.
But as I was watching it, you know, this go round, I was like, oh my God, this is like a screwball comedy. And screwball comedy is one of my absolute favorite subgenres ever. I may have talked about it a little bit on Still Pretty already. I think we have some screwball comedy moments in other episodes, but I want to read this definition from Wikipedia for all of you lovely people out there. So screwball comedy is a subgenre of the romantic comedy genre that is widely known for satirizing the traditional love story. What sets the screwball comedy apart from the generic romantic comedy is that screwball comedy puts its emphasis on a funny spoofing of love, while the more traditional romantic ultimately accents love. So, you know, other elements of the screwball comedy include things like fast-paced, overlapping repartee, farcical situations, escapist themes, and plot lines that involve courtship and marriage. So romantic leads in screwball comedies typically don't actually like each other that much at the outset.
Oh, yeah.
Or
no,
they're
you're talking about Like
Yeah.
Bringing Up Baby is the first thing that comes to mind with Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. Is exactly fits all of that. And it's one of the most classic screwball comedies.
Yeah, or My Man Godfrey. It Happened One Night is considered to be the first screwball comedy,
Yeah,
and that is
absolutely.
a story about the romantic leads are from two very different social classes. So
Clark
we've got
Gable
this
and Claudette
idea.
Colbert, yeah.
Yes. So we've got
I
this
know all that stuff.
Yes. Well, we have bonded off mic
Right.
about our love of the romantic comedies from the 1930s and 40s because they are delightful.
They're
so
so fun.
delightful.
I know.
But there's this so we've got this idea of like outranking each other and also just not liking each other that much.
Right.
And I love the exchange between Buffy and Spike at the beginning when he's in the bathtub. And I mean,
Yes.
bathtub Spike is my favorite Spike.
It's
Full
pretty
stop.
sexy, Spike.
I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put
Tied
that
up
out there.
in
I love
chained
him
up in the
so much.
bathtub is a very, very sexy version of Spike. Yes.
It's great. And Buffy is just like loving having all of this power over Spike. You know,
Yeah.
Giles, help. He's going to scold me.
I know.
Like she's just living it up.
Yeah.
So it starts off in this very screwball comedy kind of romantic setup where they have this intimate contact because she's feeding him blood from a Kiss the Librarian mug while he's chained up in the bathtub.
Oh, yeah.
And then we get this ridiculous situation that brings them together, which again is something that screwball comedy loves to do. So you mentioned Bringing Up Baby, where the couple has to take care of a pet leopard.
Right.
You know, like you do.
Like you do.
So, you know, we've got Buffy having to feed Spike through a straw, and then I'm sorry, but all of that business that he does with the straw. There's some excellent straw acting in this episode.
There certainly is. Yes.
But you know, the ridiculousness of this situation of Spike is living with Giles for the time being, and there's this it's just, and then of course it's a spell that ultimately brings them together as a couple in what we would think of as being a romantic setting. They're planning a wedding, you know, and the ridiculousness of marriage and the planning thereof is something else that we see in screwball comedies all the time.
I mean, a daytime wedding under the trees in indirect sunlight.
So good.
And
so
once
good.
again, you'll be registering as Mr. and Mrs. Big Pile of Dust.
It's so good. It's so good. But like,
Yes.
you know, in Bringing Up Baby, the woman says to a third party, he's the man I'm going to marry. He doesn't know it, but I am. And it just, like, I so hear that kind of screwball comedy heroine in Buffy when she says to Riley, you'll really like him. Well, nobody really likes him. I don't even really like him, but I love him. Like, it's so wonderfully, like, it's so wonderfully goofy, and it's such a great satire of that like googly-eyed, so in love kind of feeling. So there's this offshoot, not offshoot, but maybe subgenre of a subgenre of screwball comedy that's called the comedy of remarriage, where characters divorce and then remarry each other. And it's always, you know, the divorce turned out to be a terrible idea. His Girl Friday, which, I mean, has problems.
Oh.
But
yes. No, but I love His Girl Friday. If for nothing
so
else, it
good.
is structured like a Swiss goddamn watch. You can bounce a quarter off that structure. I teach it every year in my class, and every year I'm like, okay, there are problems. There are problems. There are a lot of problems with this, but it's so great.
It's so wonderful. It's wonderful. And Rosalind Russell, I mean,
oh my
kills
God,
it.
and those outfits, Jesus. She's unbelievable.
At some point, we're going to have to talk about the
need
romantic
romantic
comedies
comedy.
from the
We're going to need to do a
1930s.
romantic comedy podcast, I think, someday.
Easily.
If we ever finish Buffy, which we're never going to do.
We're never
because
going
we've
to.
been
We
20
live here
minutes
now.
into this, and we just can't hold on
We
to
just
a
cannot
topic.
even.
I'm sorry. I'll shut up and let you finish.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So comedy of remarriage, blah, blah, blah. You know, couple is married, gets divorced. Divorce is a huge mistake, gets remarried again. This is an inverse of that.
Yes.
You know, they're mortal enemies, and then, oh no, they're in love. And then they're mortal enemies again.
And we
get one of my favorite lines in all of Buffy, Spike lips of Spike. So good.
Oh God, it's the best.
I mean, and the title of the episode alone is perfect screwball comedy. We don't usually talk about episode titles, but you know, the reference to marriage, obviously, something blue. But also the play on words with blue as a synonym for blasphemous or somewhat risque or bleak. And of course,
interesting.
Willow's dejected state is something blue.
Because she's something blue. I know, and it's so
blue.
sad. It's so sad. Willow's grief will break your goddamn heart. I mean, even in the middle of this incredibly funny, you know, high energy kind of comedy romp of an episode, you know, we have at the core of it, Willow's grief. She goes to Oz's apartment, right? And she sees all of his stuff is there. And then she goes back and all of his stuff is gone, that he just sent for it, and it's just
devastating.
Gone. Not to mention the fact that what he left behind, like when we see the shot, what he left behind is a picture of him and her. You know, so he left all of it, everything behind, left her behind. And here she is experiencing that grief. And the thing is that we don't really necessarily like to think about this, but grief is the eventual cost of all love. I mean, eventually it's going to end in one way or another. At the very least, somebody's going to die. Like there's always going to be, and no, that's depressing. I've just depressed everybody in the audience. But you know,
we're all going to die.
But we're all going to die. Basically, I'm just saying that somebody, like eventually, if you love somebody, eventually that relationship is going to end either in separation or death. And at some point, you're going to grieve the loss of that relationship. Even the bad relationships, you grieve the loss of them, and it's just part of it. And grief is as terrible as love can be wonderful. They are kind of the necessary polar opposites of each other. So I think that, you know, with Willow, with her experiencing that grief, and grief being, you know, as terrible as it is, like such an incredibly powerful emotion, that her emotion of grief makes her even more powerful than she usually is. But it also makes her wild. It makes this power of hers, you know, like uncontrolled, you know, like more empowered but uncontrolled. And so then it goes wild, which is so much fun, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, we'll talk about this when we talk about something that Buffy says to Willow in the graveyard about relationships and passion. But it's the strength of Willow's emotion that fuels the spell. And I think that that's something, there's something really powerful in that idea, I think, of the magic being connected to the emotional state. And we've seen this with Willow before, and we will see it again.
This is not Willow's last rodeo with spells gone awry. No.
Well, and not Willow's last rodeo with the intensity of emotion being the kind of, you know, the magic that makes the magic.
Being an amplifier, from her magic. And it's also really interesting, too, about how the spell fails when she uses the language. It is my will that my heart be healed, right? But it doesn't do that, you know. It's when she makes statements, you know, you don't see anything. Why doesn't she just go marry him, you know? All of that ends up being her actual will happening. And I find that interesting, especially because my will be done. And what is Willow's nickname? Will.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat.
Those statements are connected to a strong emotion. It's not, you know, she says, it is my will that my heart be healed now. And you can like hear that she's not really feeling it. Like she doesn't really believe that is possible. It's something she wants, but it's not, there's no emotional resonance there. Yeah. And I mean, grieving Willow is really, really hard to watch. Yeah. You know, when she says to Buffy, it feels like I've been split down the middle and part of me is lost. I'm like, oh God.
I know.
You know, because we've all been there, whether it's, you know, maybe it's not a love relationship. Maybe it's, you know, any profound loss.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh, that's how it feels. It's so, oh God.
Yeah.
You know, and then like suddenly when Willow is in it, like I'm in it. It's really, it's really, really rough.
Oh God. Yeah, Willow never cries alone.
No, no, not at all. But I don't like the way her pain drinking is handled at the Bronze. Her friends act like this beer, this one light beer, is a huge problem. But she's dancing and drinking and she's hanging in there like the brave little toaster she is. And I just I'm like...
And taking one night off. Like, you know, because we have this whole thing of like, don't you remember Cave Slayer and this whole thing? And they're giving her this like after school special guilt trip about beer, which by the way, she's in college. I mean, depressed or not, she's going to be doing some drinking. I mean, generally, most people figure out exactly how much alcohol makes them have hangovers while they're in college. You know, that's sort of part of the whole college experience. For a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, that's fairly normal. And so there is that huge, you know, judgment of everything that like she's doing, like, because she's escaping. And it's one thing if she's drinking for one night and she gets a break from her grief for a little bit and she feels a little bit better, then great. If she was drinking every night for like months or whatever and it was affecting her life, then I could see them, you know, having a problem with it. But instead, it's like this big judgment, you know?
Yeah.
And it just felt a little weird.
I don't like it. I really, really don't like it. I mean, she's hiding that she's drinking, which is, you know, it's like the teeniest, tiniest little red flag. But yeah, if you want to take a night off of your, you know, you want to take a
From
night
your
off
pain,
from feeling what you're feeling and just like have a drink and dance and party and, you know.
I mean, the grief will be there when she wakes up in the morning.
Totally.
It is when she wakes up in the middle of the night, you know? It'll wait for her.
It'll be there when you wake up in the middle of the night and are like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit in a big circle of pillar candles in the shared bathroom. There's something so great about that to me, though. Like that visual of Willow in the dorm bathroom in her plaid jammies and slippers with 24 giant black pillar candles. Like, there's just, I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on why it's so perfect, but it absolutely is. And it's just one of the many things that delights me so much about not just this episode, but Willow and her, like, I'm going to do a spell for it.
Exactly, which is something that Willow is really, really prone to do. And also something that you might be prone to do, dear listener. So let me just tell you a little something. This episode of Still Pretty is brought to you by BlueAthame.com. BlueAthame.com takes all the guesswork, measuring, and careful spell writing out of witchcraft so you can come home from work and do your spell in 30 minutes or less. Sign up for your weekly subscription. We'll send you 3 spells that you can fit into your busy schedule on your time. Go to BlueAthame.com and use the code Lips of Spike to get your discount today. Or instead, you could eliminate the chances of hasty spells gone horribly awry by throwing that money directly at Chipperish Media, making it possible for us to keep your favorite podcast free and ad-free, all while we try to keep our rage quiet enough that the Hoffren does not notice us. Visit patreon.com/Chipperish to find out more.
So Lani, is Clive there yet?
No, he's still on the bus.
Still? It's been a week.
Well, I bought him a very cheap ticket. There's like loads of layovers. I think he's in Des Moines right now. Anyway, he'll be here by the next time we record, you know, maybe.
And you haven't heard from Bryony?
Not a peep. You know, I think Buffy may be onto something. I need to date more boring people.
Yes. Oh my God. Find a Riley.
Oh God. Maybe I'll just take up a hobby. I hear gardening is nice. All right. You ready to get back into it?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So I guess we can talk about Riley.
Oh my God.
I mean, okay. So Riley with his whole like lesbian alliance thing. Yes, I confess that I'm a lesbian. It's like this pseudo charm, you know? So was that a conversation we actually had or one that I was just practicing? Like he's so trying to be cute and it's just really annoying.
And he's so good at being cute. Oh my God, he's so cute. I like it. I like this Riley. I'm
glad.
I like that. I mean,
I am so floppy haired douchebaggy.
Have you seen his arms?
Overly charmed.
Those are good arms to have.
Okay. You know, fine. I don't know. I mean, it's so. And then she's like an oral exam. And I'm like, okay, here we have this opening for an oral sex joke. We don't even get that. He's so fucking boring. And then Buffy is like, Riley seems so solid. Like, he wouldn't cause me heartache. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, first of all, grief is the cost of admission for love. So it doesn't matter how nice his arms are. He's going to break your heart at one point or another. But also, like, he's boring. Like, whenever a woman says, he seems like, you know, just like a great guy and like he's not going to give me any trouble and he's so normal and all this like no,
run,
no, just pick up pick up a hobby. Gardening is great, better than Riley.
Oh my god, I like this Riley. I mean,
okay,
I think it's cute. I think the idea of him like rehearsing a conversation with Buffy is adorable. He likes to be prepared,
and then not knowing what he's actually said to her. And then, oh, was that a conversation I'm just practicing in my head? And
I've
also, you're
that.
like an oral exam, like where you didn't know that you hadn't said it to them. I mean, everybody's rehearsed a conversation in their head before,
totally.
But like
all the time, like way more often than I would care to admit. Where I'm like, okay,
wow.
I will think about having a conversation with someone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be someone, you know, cute that I want to like chat up, but
with great arms or anything,
with
right?
Great arms. But yeah, I will think about having a conversation and then realize, you know, as I'm talking to the person later, you know how we were talking about that thing on Saturday and they're like, what are you talking about? And then I have to go back and realize, oh, I meant to discuss that with them and I never did. So I mean, I just think it's cute that he's like trying to prepare because he obviously wants to get it right with her. And he says, I love his line reading on, well, you're tricky. Like, that's a line that could be like this exchange between Buffy and Riley could be really, really gross, especially on his end. And then he knows that he's sounding like such a doof when he's like, oh, every beautiful girl has a guy who's telling her she's a mystery. And he's aware that he sounds like he's being, you know, one of those guys. Even as he's trying really hard not to be one of those guys. I don't know. I like this Riley. I like that he loves driving, which I think is adorably wholesome. But his whole like, you can have the best time in a car speech is right up there with Willow's spurty knowledge speech for me. I'm like, no.
Oh, is it?
No.
I didn't even, you know what? I was so bored. I don't even remember what he said.
It's all like,
I'm like, he's driving.
Just like, lay back and relax and hug the curves and whatever. Like, it's supposed to be sexy.
Oh, God. I zoned out because I'm like, oh, Riley's talking. I don't have to pay attention.
Oh, my God. No, he's not that direct, but it's like, yeah, you just like let the sensation wash over you or whatever. Like, he's clearly, and Buffy calls him on it. She's like, are we still talking about driving?
Right. And there's that moment.
And he's like, I thought I was. Like, he doesn't even realize what he's saying, which I think is supposed to be cute. But that bit, I want to stake. The Riley like doesn't realize that he's talking about having sex when he's talking about driving, which I don't like it. But you mentioned Riley and the lesbian alliance.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. And I'll tell you why I don't buy it. Where are the butches with the Makitas? Like, where are the masculine presenting lesbians with their power tools? I mean, where are the femme lesbians with their power tools? I don't know. Like, I like Riley and I like watching his arms hang banners as much as the next lesbian.
Sure.
But, no, like, I do not buy this as the lesbian alliance. Like, someone, and someone made the decision. It was like, oh, we're going to have like all like long hair giggly femmes be the lesbian alliance at Sunnydale. And I'm like, not that there's anything wrong with long hair giggly femmes. I like them very much. My girlfriend tends to be a long hair giggly femme on occasion, which is lovely. But lesbians, I mean, come on, guys. It's 1999. Lesbians have power tools. This is just, I do not feel seen. I want my media, I want my queer representation to represent me as a queer lady. Anyway.
Right. Or to represent the whole range of queer ladies. That we have the femmes represented.
There are
right?
many colors in the gay lady
There
rainbow. And they're all beautiful.
Let's see them all, right?
Love the gay lady rainbow.
And the only gay lady rainbow we get is Riley being like, yeah, I'm a lesbian.
Okay,
like, oh,
but
God,
but here's the thing. Like, I actually really like that line, and I'll tell you why. I will tell you why. I mean, you know how I feel about Riley, and now everyone knows how I feel about lesbians, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we cleared that. But I feel very much like when Buffy walks up and says, is there something you want to tell me? She's setting up a joke. And it kind of sounds like it's, you know, like low-key homophobic.
Uh-huh.
Just like her tone is low-key homophobic. And Riley does not take that bait at all. He just looks at the banner and says, matter-of-factly, yes, I am a lesbian. Like, he's
but that
not...
is him taking the bait. Like, he is making the joke. Like, not taking the bait to say, no, I was just putting a sign up for these people who deserve to be acknowledged as normal people. Like,
because the joke is shaming. The joke is, okay, the joke is I am outing you. That's the joke. The joke is you're not telling me that you're a lesbian and now I have found you out because you're hanging up this banner. That's the joke. Because outing someone, finding out some information about someone and their sexuality is a thing that we do, especially in the late 90s, as like, this is funny. And it's like, okay, if you're, you know, playing gender detective or sexuality detective on someone and trying to catch them in the act of doing something. And I know that I'm like expanding this into a big thing, but like that, like the low key homophobia of, is there something you want to tell me? Like, because you are associated with this group, therefore I have found out something about you that you might not otherwise share with me, makes me super, super uncomfortable. So when he says it with no irony, he says it with no like wink to...
Yeah, but isn't it a wink because he's a man? Like, because he can't be a lesbian because he's... I mean, I guess he can't be. I don't think he can be a lesbian because he's a man. Right?
I mean, without getting into like the splinterings in the queer community of like
gender politics.
Like, this is okay. My position only. He, him lesbians are valid. They, them lesbians are valid. Lesbians who use any and all pronouns are valid. If you identify as a lesbian, you're a lesbian. There you go. I don't think that's what Riley is doing. I think Riley is shutting down that Riley is shutting down the notion that we're going to make jokes about lesbians. Because he says it with no shame. He doesn't try to distance himself from the idea of being a lesbian, even though he is clearly not.
I think that's what it feels to me. Okay, I'm not going to, like, I'm making this last way longer than it needs to last.
I love this discussion. How many times can we say lesbian on this podcast? That's really
I know, let's say it a lot. Let's say it a lot. Let's normalize the fuck out of all of the terms.
Well, and that's another thing too. Yeah. Like, normalizing the word lesbian, because we talk about gay rights, and we talk about, you know, the gay, like, you know, gay marriage was a big phrase for a while there. And when we say gay, yes, it's shorthand for everyone in the queer community. But I think that by and large, that word is associated with gay men, and specifically white cis gay men. So when we say things like, when we say lesbian, when we say bisexual, you know, transgender, intersex, who else is out there? Who else do I love out there? My queer friends, my gender fluid friends, gender queer, two-spirit, asexual, aromantic, demisexual, demiromantic, like all of these people are lumped under this category of gay in pop culture. And then we're supposed to be, I don't know, like, super relieved when we have like white cis gay men telling us all what rights we want and need. So I mean, the queer community can be just as problematic and patriarchal as we all can, because we all live in the white
because
supremacist.
we're all raised in this stupid culture that's terrible.
Yeah.
In a lot of
So
ways.
Riley normalizing normalizing the phrase, yes, I am a lesbian. I'm here for it. And
Okay, no, and you know what? And I love it, and I'm really, really glad that you have that response to it, because that is a personal experience for you, and so seeing it represented in that way, I defer to your reading. That's not how I read it. I read him as making fun of it, but I like your reading better, so I'm going with that.
I mean, and you know, my reading is just one of like a million different readings. So,
but I like
you know,
it.
hashtag
I like it.
still
I want
pretty on Twitter.
Right. I want Noelle to feel supported by stupid Riley and his stupid arms. So anyway,
Oh, I don't feel supported by Riley. I feel like infinitesimally more. I'm like, it's like, oh, it is the
acknowledged
tiniest.
and seen. Yeah,
It is the tiniest
little bit.
breadcrumb in the,
especially in that time frame
God,
when just being, you know, LGBTQ, anything was always, that's the funny thing. Oh, it's a joke. You know, it's
always
not a
joke.
joke. It's just what people are. It's so, yeah.
And lesbians specifically are often the butts of jokes. Because we don't take women's desire seriously. And I'm going to talk about that so much more as we move through this season in particular. But
right. We will absolutely get there. But before
This
we do,
Week
let's
in
hold
Men.
that. This Week in Men. This Week in Men, let's talk about Giles. Giles is a good man. Giles.
Okay.
I love how Giles has no interest in moralizing with these kids. He's all business. When Buffy spent the night with Parker, he has no interest in talking about her having sex. When Willow says, you know, forget the beer, he says happily, and he just wants to get down to business.
Yep.
Like, I love the way he is as a father figure to these kids, but also as like a colleague and a coworker. He's not interested in micromanaging their personal lives. Like, you guys are adults, you figure it out. It's none of my damn business. I love that. I love, though, how touched he is when Buffy asks him to give her away. That moment where he's like, oh, Buffy. And then, of course, he realizes how ridiculous it is. But it's so sweet in that moment. I almost want to cry.
I love the emotional whiplash of that moment
Yes.
so much. Especially because I'm right there in it with Giles. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
God. Like, she's like, this day is about family. And I'm like, that's right.
Oh, I know. It's so great. I just love it. I love when he goes completely blind and the two of them are kissing. He's like, it's okay. I have more scotch. It's my favorite. I just love everything. I can hear all the smacking. I love
so good.
everything Giles in this episode.
So last week we had Giles as the patriarch of the family Thanksgiving dinner. And
Yes.
it just occurred to me, like right this minute, that may be a bit of a turning point for Giles in terms of his, like, really solidifying his relationship with this group of people as the dad. And that's something I absolutely adore about him in this episode, is he is very obviously, very clearly the dad. He's everyone's dad. He comes to Willow and is like, it's not like you to shirk on your responsibilities.
Yeah.
In a very, like, it's very much the serious talk with dad kind of scene. And I love him just being so irritated with the entire situation. You know, Spike is in the bathtub screaming for telly time, and Giles says, "Oh, you'll do what? Lick me to death?" Like, he just cannot. Like, he cannot even.
I love it so much.
It's so great, but yeah. But he is clearly the dad in this episode. I mean, to the point that, like, he knows, you know, when it's revealed to Xander and Anya that he's blind, and Xander is wiggling his fingers in front of Giles' face, and Giles just says, "Stop, whatever you're doing." Like, he just knows. He knows.
Yes.
He doesn't even. And then we get the punctuation. You smell like fruit roll-ups. And there's something about hearing Anthony Stewart Head say, "You smell like fruit roll-ups." That's just like, I'm like, okay, This is ridiculous.
Well, I'll make that into a ringtone for you, and you can put it for when I call you. You smell like fruit roll-ups.
Stop whatever you're doing. You smell like fruit roll. Like, he's so disgusted. He's like, it's so clearly this, like, oh, these kids. Like, what have I gotten myself into now?
Yes. Oh my God. I know. But there is one thing, though, in this episode that I love. We're going to get back to all the other stuff that I love because I love so much of it. But this one moment right before they figure out what happened with Willow, when Xander comes in, he's like, and Willow was, in my room moping and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, by the way, so tired of it. And then Buffy's like, well, we're all tired of it. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is your friend who's had this horrible thing happen to her, who's been in grief for what, a couple of weeks? Like, no, I'm sorry. When you're friends with somebody, I have walked friends through years of grief, and I'm always there for it. Like, and it's never an inconvenience or like, oh my God, this person's whining again. And so there's something about that coming from Buffy and Xander, who are Willow's closest friends, that I just felt so, and I'm going to write it off that they were under the effect of a spell that also made them kind of assholes a little bit, maybe. Maybe in one of the cuts that didn't make it, Willow said, may my friends both be assholes. Like, I don't know. It just seems so cruel. And then, of course, there's Anya being, you mean I don't have to be nice about her anymore? And, like, I appreciate that from Anya because that's genuinely Anya. But Buffy and Xander, like, that rung so hollow for me.
Yeah, I do not like Buffy in this episode with Willow. Like the Buffy who seems annoyed and, put out by her friend's pain.
Yeah.
Like, and it seems out of character for Buffy.
It is out of character. It's completely out of character. Like, what was it? Just a couple of weeks ago, she had to leave Willow, but didn't want to leave Willow.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that was really hard for her. And she struggled with leaving Willow when Willow was grieving like that,
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It feels out of character. It feels like even for Xander, it feels out of character because Xander is quickly, especially in season 4, we're getting the Xander that, we kind of come to know and love throughout the rest of the run of the season or of the series, where he is the heart. He's the one. He sits and talks to people in their pain. He sits with people in their pain. That's what Xander does, And so I don't know. I find it really irritating to have just that throwaway, like, and they could have cut that out and it would have been fine. But they have this so tired of it, And then we have Willow talking about that. Yeah. Like, my friends don't want to listen to me talk about it. They don't want to, but here I am in this pain. And you know what? Willow's right.
Yep. The only person who's kind to Willow in this is Riley.
Yeah.
When they're picnicking and Buffy is so put out because her friend has come over and, is all depressed, Riley invites her to sit down. And then they have that, like, awkward, adorable conversation about the apples turning brown.
Right. It's Riley's only good moment. It's the only time when I'm actually interested in Riley is when he's being nice to Willow.
And this is not the first time that he's been nice to Willow. Like,
No, he's been really good to Willow.
I appreciate the Riley as a friend to Willow.
Yeah.
It's a itty bitty little arc, but it's there and I like it.
That relationship so much better than the Buffy and Riley relationship.
I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, let's move on from Riley because, oh God. But Spike in this episode is like my favorite thing. I love everything about Spike. I love all the flavors of Spike. We have chained up in the bathtub Spike. We have desperately scratching at the ground to get back to the initiative Spike. We have doing a spell to help Giles Spike when he's like, it's almost like you're my father-in-law, isn't it? And my God, it just touched my heart so much. And I love him. I love him planning the wedding with Buffy and still being snarky. Like, even though they're under this weird love spell, Yeah. He's still like, yes, you'll be registering as Mr. and Mrs. Big Pile of Dust, And when he gets jealous about Angel and all of it, I just freaking love it. I love it.
When Spike goes looking through Giles's books for a general reversal spell, the first book he picks up has the symbol from Gingerbread on it, which
my God, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, a little production design loveliness for you. I love their confusion at being under the spell when Willow says he's probably just standing out there, and they say,
Right.
and then there they are. And I thought that was going to take longer. Me too. And Buffy being annoyed with Spike in that moment where he's scratching at the ground and digging. And,
Oh, yeah.
Is so funny. Like she's just,
Yeah.
she's not threatened by him at all. And I love that gives her the space to just be kind of, eye rolly around him.
Right.
And we're in total screwball comedy territory with these two. I mean, that like trading blows where he smacks her and then gets the head, his chip goes off and he grabs his head and then she just whacks him back and says, okay, I'm going to gag you. I was like,
and then she drags him back. Oh, Giles, I accidentally killed Spike. That's okay, right? And the way that she taunts him, when she taunts him with her neck in the beginning when he's in the bathtub, it's so great. And it is sexual. There is this sexual chemistry between the two of them. And Spike, when he is staring at her neck, he's 50-50 on biting or kissing. Like, I'm sorry. Like, Spike has been into Buffy from season 2. I will argue that. I will argue that all day long.
Well, and like the hottest moment in this whole episode is when they're in the crypt and she falls on top of him and he goes, Slayer. And then they just start making out and I'm like,
Right.
I have feelings about this.
It's so great. And they are like, this is both of them, they are kind of, I mean, Buffy at this point would probably not admit it. And then at the end, she's like, well, after this whole thing, I'm giving up on my whole bad boy thing. This has cured me of my bad boy thing, which by the way, no, it has not.
No.
In no way. As a matter of fact, it has specifically given you like the spike, whatever that is. Whatever disease is, you've got it bad for Spike. That's what you've gotten from this. So I think that there was definitely something in Something Blue that like amped up whatever it is between Spike and Buffy and was not just the effect of the spell itself, So I love the whole thing. I love how excited she is. I love when they're planning everything.
It's so funny.
It's all so great. And there is still that chemistry. And there is much, much more chemistry between Spike and Buffy in this episode than between Riley and Buffy during the entirety of their whole run of relationship. It is so great. I love all of it.
Well, partly it's that James Marsters as Spike is like, I mean, thank you for blessing us with this performance.
Yes.
Like I feel
so
like
good.
I'm witnessing something just truly extraordinary. I mean, the whole when she's pouting and he says, "Oh, look at that lip. I'm gonna get it." And I'm like, "Oh dear God." It's so good. Like the Spike who is under a spell into Buffy is still like they still are themselves under the spell, just like more so, which I think is a really great.
Well, and honest with each other. Because the thing is, like, Buffy and Riley right now are not being honest with each other. Neither one of them knows who the other one is. But with Spike and Buffy, like, they know each other. Yeah. They're actually honest and straightforward with each other because they don't care what the other one thinks, And I think that that's kind of a thing. Like it's, the honesty is sexy and it makes the relationship just more real. And we're going to get to talking about that, of course, with Riley as they, finally discover who each other is, as we move forward in the season. But for right now, like as a comparison between Spike and Buffy and Riley and Buffy, especially in this episode, I mean, Spike and Buffy win like by miles.
Yeah,
they win.
Hands down. Hands down, easily.
Hands down, absolutely. Another great thing we get in this episode, although it's not much, is Anya. Now, Anya ends up kind of being a problem throughout like the run where she's with Xander, because more and more and more she becomes the comedy mule. She makes the jokes about how she loves money and she takes everything so literally and all this kind of stuff. But here, like as soon as she realizes that that Willow was taken by the Hoffren and this is what the Hoffren does, and she explains the whole thing, and then while everybody is fighting off all of these demons that are coming after Xander. She is there in the dirt, making the circle, doing the incantation, summoning D'Hoffryn. And I mean, yeah, she kind of screws it up a little bit, but it's 1120 years. It's hard to remember all that stuff. So I love her being all badass in this episode for at least a minute. I love when we give Anya some competence and capability. A millennium as a demon, you'll learn a thing or two. Like, she had some skills. She also got D'Hoffryn's attention because she was doing spells. So she has some magical mojo, and yet we never use her competence. We so rarely turn to Anya's competence. And I love that we did that in this episode, even though it was just for a minute.
Yeah, and she knows what to do with the various demons. You know, the demon breaks into the basement, and she's like, no, drowning's the only way to kill it. Like, she knows. I love a girl who knows her demons. Like, it's just,
that's right.
It's great. I enjoy
it's good stuff.
I enjoy Anya.
She's so wonderful.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's not enough for her to do, but her being irritated, trying to remember the words to summon D'Hoffryn is delightful, and such a great little bit of vulnerability for her. That, like, she forgets the words to the incantation sometimes, and it's kind of a problem.
It's great.
It's great.
Well, while demons are attacking, trying to remember an incantation while demons are attacking, I mean, I think we can sympathize with that. That's a stressful situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something I want to talk about with this episode is the concept of passion. You know, we have Buffy at the beginning saying, real love and passion have to go hand in hand with pain and fighting. This is what she is suggesting based on her experience, you know, thus far. And I really feel like we need to define our terms here with a shout out to Dr. Kelly Jones.
Yes.
You know, it's clearly passion, and the word passion is kind of a leitmotif in this episode. I mean, Spike's show, of course, is Passions, which is delightful. They could have chosen, you know, any number of things, but that's a show.
Of course, it's Passions. Well, Passions was basically like the, I don't know, mid-90s, you know, Dark Shadows. You know, it's all this like weird magical stuff, so that makes sense. But but I mean, considering the use of that word and as deliberately as that word seems to be used. And again, of course, we went back, you know, in season 2, we have the episode Passion, you know, narrated by Angel, which was so much darker when Jenny Calendar is killed, right? So, I mean, talking about passion and what passion does, I think is something that, you know, we hit on from time to time with Buffy, and definitely in this episode.
Yeah, and Willow's spell is, out of my passions a web be spun. So that raises, I mean, we're raising an interesting question of like, well, what exactly what passion are we talking about here? Because obviously passion is what makes the spell work, ultimately. It's when Willow gets angry that her will is done, or when she feels that strong emotion. And passion really is any powerful or compelling emotion. We have this, like, we've sort of lost that word to the idea of like sexual heat. And it's that, but it's also just any emotion that is sort of
the powerfully felt.
Yeah, or all-encompassing.
Yeah, intensity.
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
And I think something that I find really interesting is, especially with this theme of like marriage and coupling and, you know, dating and the loss of one love, and then Buffy's, you know, on the verge of this relationship, air quotes, with Riley, and then Magic and Spike and all of that. The passion that we actually get in this episode is very childish. It's not the sexual heat. It's Willow taking her hurt out on Xander, you know, her oldest friend, like from kindergarten, you know, in a big way. I mean, she mocks him about living in a basement, and any pain he may have associated with that. And I really don't appreciate Willow trying to make Xander's relationship status with Miss French, the praying mantis, and Ampada, the mummy girl, part of his permanent dating record, because those were not relationships. But we see this passion, this kind of childish side of passion in Willow's hurt. You know, I mean, we even get why doesn't she just marry him, which is, you know, schoolyard taunt, not adult processing grief and hurt kind of kind of language. And I mean, she's in this state of it's not fair. And I think it's interesting that what we're actually seeing, you know, we're hearing about passion in relationships, but what we're seeing is this childishness, really. I mean, even Buffy and Spike planning a wedding and making out is totally like, there's something very, very childish and super playful about it. I mean, to the point of Buffy singing the wedding march and walking a cake topper up Spike's arm. The only real moment, I mean, I mentioned it already, but the only real moment of heat that we have is that Slayer growl that he gives her. But other than that, it's all very like you know, the love part is this like starry-eyed, I'm getting married.
Right.
So I don't know. What do you make of passion and the way that this episode spins it, or maybe doesn't? I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at here. I mean, like, it's
but it's interesting though, because passion we like culturally associate with two things, right? Sex and work. Right? Follow your passion. Like, what is it that you feel so intensely about, you know? And then the passion that we get here is this just intensity of feeling from Willow, that when she feels something intensely, it warps the reality around her, you know? And she does say, you know, out of my passions, a web be spun, right? So she's pulling that in. And it's interesting because when she's saying, you know, let my heart be healed, it is my will that this Q-tip become unbending. Right? She's not passionate about that. It's when she's passionate that her eyes light up and that she absolutely warps the world around her. So it is interesting because one of the things about the intensity of passion is that it really resists control. It resists your ability to like keep it in check and hold it in check, you know? And so I find that kind of an interesting little thing that in a show where we do talk about passion a lot. And everything between Buffy and Spike is a really kind of immature, almost, here are my Barbie and Ken dolls getting married, you know, that this is what we see marriage as, but the passionate moment happens for them in the middle of fighting, which is both of them. Like, that is a huge part of who each of them are. And they work really well together when they're fighting together, you know, which is something that, of course, you know me. Good romance is built on people who work well together. And here they are. They understand each other. They're honest with each other and they work really well together. And that is where that kind of real deep passion between them sort of, you know, shows up. And I think that it shows up for Buffy too. I mean, I think that Spike has always had a thing for Buffy, but I think in this moment, you know, there's some genuine excitement about Spike, you know, that she has the freedom to feel because she's under the influence. And even in that moment where she's like, well, I must be immune to the effects of the spell because, you know, I'm the Slayer, right?
So funny.
That it doesn't occur to her that wanting to marry Spike is at all weird.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yep. It is delightful. And I realized that in all of the white guilt settler feels of last week, I completely forgot to talk about the food.
Oh.
And specifically the way food is representative of everything that's going on in a character's life. I mean, what they eat, how, when, what foods are around just in the mise en scène. I mean, food is such a charged thing for humans of all cultures, you know, of course it is, right? So when a writer or production designer or actor or whomever brings food into a scene, you can be pretty confident that we're tapped into symbolism.
Sure.
So like anything you want to say about food is like, you know, it's anything goes. And we get some riffs on food and feeding in Something Blue with, of course, Buffy feeding Spike blood. Out of the Kiss the Librarian mug, I want to know how Giles came to own that mug.
Oh, one of the kids got it for him for Christmas. I guarantee it.
Xander,
one
perhaps?
Of the kids bought it for him. Very likely
Xander. It feels like
Xander.
a Xandarian sort
Very
of gift.
likely Xander.
But, you know, like it's Spike drinking blood through a straw out of the mug is this like, it's intimate and ridiculous at the same time. And that is kind of Buffy and Spike's entire relationship, is this intimacy mixed with ridiculousness, mixed with the grotesque of, he is a vampire who eats blood, but
he's a vampire who doesn't even have a soul. Like, here she was with Angel. At least Angel had a soul, right? So she could make that. But he's a vampire without a soul. The only reason why he's not trying to kill her right now is because he'll get a migraine, So yeah, like the whole thing about Buffy and Spike, it is a patently ridiculous situation. And yet at the core of it, there is this very real kind of respect for each other. And I think genuine liking and enjoyment of each other. She is enjoying taunting him.
She enjoys
She is
him
having
so much.
fun taunting him. Oh, look at my neck all exposed. Like, she knows exactly what she's doing, and she's loving it.
And taunting him with being his food. The idea of being consumed by him in that way is both ridiculous and sexy and also grotesque.
All of that.
But yeah, it's great. It's great. And of course we have Riley feeding Buffy, planning a picnic complete with ants.
Oh, sure.
But
planning a picnic
complete with
ants. And of course he brings
so
apples.
Cute. Yeah. Of course he brings apples, right? Like
because what's more wholesome?
Pre-sliced, as American as apple slices.
Right.
But Buffy says, all I have to do is show up and eat. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of great. Like, if all you have to do is show up and eat, like, that's a good basis for a relationship. At least that's a jumping off point. And of course, Willow has to make it awkward at the picnic.
Right.
Poor Willow. Your apples are
Your
turning
apples
brown.
are turning brown.
Like they do. Because, of course, she's seeing the aging and decay of everything.
Exactly.
This is our same Willow who has told Riley that, it starts out great. And then you rip each other's hearts out. And of course, we have drinking as well. We talked about Willow's drinking a little bit, her light beer. And then we have Giles's scotch. And I like this as kind of a counterpoint of childish problems versus adult problems.
Right.
Not that one is really
is light beer childish, I guess.
I mean, it's presented in this very childish way. Like, look, it's light beer,
yes,
no big deal, like tee-hee. Whereas Giles is like, nope, nobody help me. I'm gonna get the scotch.
This problem requires scotch.
Yep. And Willow at the end baking chocolate chip cookies. I mean, I say often that you don't bake cookies for people you don't like, but I also like the idea of, like, guilt baking.
Guilt baking relieves 30% of my guilt, but only 7% of my inner turmoil.
I want to know where she's getting those numbers. Like, that's
I
very
know.
specific.
Well, it's just like Willow to quantify.
Yes.
Yeah,
to quantify guilt and turmoil. And of course, then we get the lovely, Spike. Don't I get a cookie? And Buffy says, no.
no cookie for you.
But then Willow shoves one in his mouth anyway. She's just tired of the talking.
Because she feels guilty about him, too.
Yep. Well, he still has the Slayer taste in his mouth.
He still has the taste of Slayer in his mouth, which he will never forget and never not want because it's Spike. But there are a couple of things, though, that we did mention that I absolutely loved in this episode. One of them is in the beginning when Buffy was talking about seeing Angel in L.A., even for 5 minutes, Hello to the Pain. Now, of course, anybody who has watched Angel, that is the episode I Will Remember You, which is the episode that grabs your heart, still beating, out of your chest, throws it on the floor, stomps on it for a while you weep. So I Will Remember You is but Buffy, of course, doesn't remember that. And then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, poor Angel has to remember everything. Like, we have him, he remembers what happened and I Will Remember You. He's the one who has to carry that weight with him all the time, knowing what he had and then had to give up. And then, of course, right now over in Still Dead, we're talking about Angel season 5, where he has reset Connor so that Connor is living a normal life and has everything that he wants with a family, but nobody remembers Connor except for him. So Angel has to hold the weight of memory of everything. And I'll talk about that over on Still Dead. But oh my my God, for that one moment, I felt that. It was like a punch to the gut, you know?
And it's
Oh,
lovely
so
because
hard.
if you're not watching Angel, you just, it's sad and
Yeah, then you're fine. You're like, oh, she went and saw Angel.
it's sad
Fine,
and sweet,
you know?
but also then if you do know what happened, you're like, holy shit!
Oh
you
my God!
licked ice cream off his chest. What are you?
I know, he was human. It was great. It was so great.
Yep.
But anyway, and then we also have this wonderful little cameo from Elizabeth Ann Allen as Amy.
Yes.
First, she's a perfectly normal girl, and then you see her naked on the bed looking around like, what the hell? Then she's a rat, and she goes right back. Oh my God. It's one of the best moments in this whole episode. I just love it.
So great. It's so great. Thank you to everyone who made that moment possible because
absolutely.
Is it corny? A little bit, but it works.
Oh God, I love it.
Well.
I love it so much. It's it's the best thing. That's one of those things that came up in the writer's room where they're all like, oh, we could do this, and sometimes those things don't work out well, but sometimes they do. So poor Elizabeth Ann Allen is not wearing anything, but Noelle, this week, what are you wearing?
Willow's stripy knit poncho that she's wearing in the graveyard.
It's so restrictive.
Yeah, it's not a loose and flowy poncho. It's like it almost looks binding.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she's walking through the graveyard with Buffy talking about relationships and how, they go horribly wrong if there's any fire in them. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like we're back to the heart protecty sort of shield chest covering for Willow. Willow is she is very bound up in
She's
her
protecting her heart,
her view of relationships. And I also love that Willow wears a purple top with flower appliques on it that are reminiscent of the Lesbian Alliance banners color scheme.
Oh, God, interesting.
And as yet another testament to the brilliance happening in the Still Pretty Discord chat, Sada, the costume nerd, pointed out that Willow's largely purple wardrobe at this point might be a marker of her queerness. Purple as a color is associated with lesbians. And of course, there's the Lavender Menace, the informal group of radical lesbian feminists who came together in 1970 to protest the exclusion of lesbians and lesbian issues from the feminist movement. So,
hey, good for them. Good for them. Yeah.
Thank you, Sada, for reminding me of my gay lady history. And I highly recommend checking out her YouTube channel, The Costume Codex, for deep dives into Buffy the Vampire Slayer and wardrobe.
I know she does fantastic videos on the costuming in Buffy. So you guys absolutely have to check that out. We will put the link in the show notes. All right. So we have a wonderful moment this week, which tickled me. So I'm going to pull this audio and we're going to use it whenever we do our Girl Power Moment of the Week.
Oh, not with a girl power bit.
All right. So Noelle, what do you have for your Girl Power?
Willow standing up for herself is great, saying no one wants to be inconvenienced by her grief. Even though she takes it out on Giles and not on Buffy, I'm giving her credit for self-knowledge.
Right, right.
I talked about Anya knowing her demons. Of course she does. It's great. Anya is demon literate. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Excuse me. And of course, speaking of demons, Willow telling D'Hoffryn, I don't want to be a demon. I just want to go back and help my friends. And she says it with all of this conviction, but also fear because we don't yet know that D'Hoffryn is not
D'Hoffryn's going to be like, all right,
crack
cool.
down. Yeah, like
Here's my talisman. Call, maybe change your mind.
We're waiting for the, the Sturm and Drang of D'Hoffryn to come down on poor Willow. And instead he's like, oh, well, give us a chant,
Give us a chance. It's so great. It's so great. I love it. All right. So, Noelle, what is your favorite part?
Oh, my God. I have so many favorite parts. Can most of the episode be my favorite part?
Most of the episode. You know what? Your favorite part can be whatever you want.
I mean, okay. Basically every other line is my favorite part. This is some of my favorite writing. But James Marsters just kills it with Mr. and Mrs. Big Pile of Dust.
I so love it.
I love it. I love it so much. And when he growls Slayer at Buffy as they're as the fight is going on, and then they proceed
That's
to
pretty good.
nope out of the fight by making out. It's pretty hot, actually.
It is.
I like it.
It's really, really great.
What about you, Lani? What's your favorite part?
Oh, just all the Spike and Buffy, like all of it. But while the constant making out and the ridiculous of the wedding, like it's really fun. There's so much fun stuff there. I think my favorite part is when Spike steps up to help out Giles and he says it's kind of like you're my father-in-law now, you know? I love the way that he loves Buffy so much that it extends to the people around her, you know, and that even though he's had this conflict, you know, with Giles, they don't like each other very much. As the second there's a problem, while Buffy's, you know, talking to Giles, he's up, he's looking through the books, he's figuring everything out, he's finding a solution. Like, I don't know, there's something about that I really just love.
Oh, they're all a family now.
I know, they're family now. It's so great. All right, if you enjoyed this conversation, would like to join in, come find us on Twitter. I am at Lani Diane Rich, and Noelle is at Noelle Aloud, and the hashtag is Still Pretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish Media producers who support us on Patreon at the Power Producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to our October producers: Jonathan, Noelle, Kristen, Alyssa, Alice, Erica, Shelley, Abigail, and Sarah. And this week's special message for our power producers: stop that right now. I can hear the smacking.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or detail Giles' car.
We will be back next time with Hush.
Oh my God!
The 10th episode of season 4. Until then, just think of my lips as the fruit roll-ups of love.